Welcome to Ability MKE, the Pulling Each Other Along show. I'm Dave Clark, along with co-host Dave Geist and Doug Cornfield. Welcoming you to another Thursday night edition of the Pulling Each Other Along show on 104.1 FM River West Radio, WXRW in Milwaukee. Dave, Doug, welcome to another Thursday night.
All right. Thanks, Dave. How you guys doing?
Doing all right. Doing okay. How are you, Doug? I see half of my face.
Yeah, we got halves for right now. We'll fix that later. I don't know. You know, it's that. Here we go. That's better.
There we go.
Always better than no face at all.
Yeah. So obviously,
face for radio, man.
How's the weather in Milwaukee? What's the weather report for the 101.1 River West Radio?
30s. It's getting warmer. Spring is coming. Baseball is in the air, so we're getting there.
Can't beat that. We already got it down here, Dave. Doug and I are both here in Florida.
I'm in Dave's house right now, and I think he's got the heat on to about 95 degrees.
He's always complaining.
It's so hot in here.
All right. Anyway, let's move on to the show tonight. We have a special guest, and we go back a long way. We were teammates. I was his coach. He hated me. He loved me. He hated me. He loved me. I'd like to welcome to the show Tim Walsh. Tim?
Hey, guys.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Great to be here.
Good to have you on. And I'm going to lead you in. We've got Doug Cornfield and Todd Sivan have written a book that's going to be released soon called Pulling Each Other Along. And in it, there are some inspirational stories, chapter by chapter of different people. Rocky Blyer, some well-known like Rocky, some people that are not well-known. And you happen to have a chapter in the book that you wrote regarding someone who probably is well-known by his game, but maybe not well-known by his own name, and a very interesting story. So I'd like to start out. Tell us a little bit about Operation and the chapter you wrote for the book.
Sure. Well, I'm in the toy industry. So after I played baseball with you, I entered the toy industry and I invented some games and have a nice career in toys. And I met a guy named John Spinello. And John Spinello is the inventor of the classic game Operation. And I was writing a book in 2004 and wanted to include Operation in that book because it was all about toys. And found John and interviewed him. And it's hard to tell this story in a short manner, but we became good friends. And unfortunately, when he created that game, he sold it for $500. He never made any royalties. And he had a very successful career in warehousing business in Chicago, and then fell on some hard times. And a friend of mine and I, who were friends with him, decided to do a CrowdRise campaign and try to get him some money because he needed surgery that he couldn't afford. And the story that I write in this book sort of tells the tale of what happened when we did that, and it's pretty interesting.
Quite ironic that the inventor of the game Operation needs an operation and yet doesn't have the wherewithal to get that operation. And I know you have befriended the man personally, and I think what you did was amazing. when I read that chapter, I wasn't aware of that either. So, readers that get this book and read about John are going to be amazed at what you did for him and what's going on with him today.
Yeah, he, our influence travels further than any of us realize. And certainly John, having invented a game that's sold 45 million copies all over the world, he certainly influenced a lot of people. But as the tale unfolds in the book, he finds out that his reach traveled much further than he ever could have realized. So we tell some interesting, weave in some interesting stories from people that wrote to John. And then I don't want to give anything away in the chapter, but yeah, his influence really traveled much further than he realized.
I think you hit a key point there. You're absolutely right. What you do and the leadership or whatever you want to call it, or people you meet and different situations, you never know where that's going to lead. And what influence it might have on someone else. So it is a fantastic web we weave, so to speak, when you're talking about who's influenced you. And I think that's going to lead us along to Doug Cornfield's question to you. So Doug, I'm going to throw it over to you, and you've got that question.
Oh, I got all sorts of questions lined up for Tim.
The big one.
So we'll start with you wrote, you've helped us with this chapter, and it's really it is a delightful chapter. I wish I had half the writing skills that you have, and it's just outstanding. And so I know it's going to be a favorite. And obviously we're teasing them a little bit by not telling them the whole story here, but it is really, you hate to say one of the best chapters, but it's just a gret chapter. It was so well written. So we're glad you're involved in the Pulling Each Other Along book, and
absolutely.
And I want to talk a little bit, because your story, I knew of you in essence before I knew you, and we've known each other now for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Because they put me in contact with you over the phone, and we eventually got to meet through Disability Dream and Do, and you being an Indianapolis clown, I've got to ask you a question before we get into that bigger question. What is this shirt? No clown.
There you go.
No,
I'm like, I saw this on your Facebook. I stole it. Sorry. And anybody that's on the radio at 104.1 River West Radio, Tim is wearing a No Clowns T-shirt at one of his toy conventions.
Was that after I pulled you in the second inning?
I'm a little confused.
Okay, so some backstory.
Here we go.
I'm not a big fan of clowns per se.
I wasn't either.
Now, I'm not afraid of clowns, because many people have a fear of clowns. That's called chlorophobia or something like that. I just don't think they're funny. Okay, so there was an old TV game show where it was called Don't Make Me Laugh, and if you sat in a chair in front of these comedians, and if you held your laughter, you didn't laugh, then you won all kinds of money. So if I were on that show and you put a clown in front of me, I would be money every time.
Unless it was Sal. It was Sal.
Yeah. But that T-shirt. Okay, so I have a partner. He's Australian. He's a great guy, and he was visiting Sarasota. Now, many of the listeners may not know this, but Sarasota is the home of Ringling Museum and the home of the Ringling Circus. So I took my partner Dennis to see the Ringling Museum, and it's got classic art and Renaissance art, beautiful collection. And then it starts getting into like the circus-y kind of theme, right? And as I was going through this museum with my partner and his wife, Dennis disappeared. He was gone. And I turned to Crystal and I said, "What happened to Dennis?" And she said, he ditched us. I don't know. And we went through the clown section and the circus section, and we came out, and there's Dennis looking rather annoyed. And I said, "Hey, what happened? Where'd you go?" he leaned in and said, "I don't do clowns, mate." He does not like clowns either. So right then and there, we said we got to do a clown game. So that T-shirt, that was a very long story, but that T-shirt is a game we did called No Clowns.
That's ironic, man.
I felt that way many nights back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, if you don't mind, we'll get to the more serious question. I had to start off with that. That shirt just kind of hit me differently, knowing you were on the famous Indianapolis Clowns. And for those of you that are listening, we have 3 clowns on the show, and I'm not one of them. We've got Dave Clark, the owner of the Clowns, and he's probably the biggest clown in the radio show here. We got Tim Walsh, who I think your nickname, you might have had more than one nickname, was the Stork. And Dave Geis, what was your nickname when you were part of the Clowns?
I have no idea.
You don't remember?
No idea. Nothing that we can see on the radio anyway.
So anyway, Tim, we've got this book coming, pulling each other along, and I want your story of what or who pulled you along, a specific story of somebody. I'm sure you have many. Most of us have many, but what's the one that comes to mind?
Well, I'm gonna embarrass him and say it's Dave Clark. Yeah. So yeah, you can literally pull someone along, and then you can just influence people and pull them along by how you conduct yourself. And I remember distinctly being I don't want to say self-absorbed young ball player, but pretty close. And a lot of people that played for the Clowns were people that were just trying to hang on to their baseball dream, right? They weren't good enough to get drafted. They maybe weren't good enough to play at a higher level, but they just couldn't give up this dream. And, so I never forget when I first met Dave Clark, he was doing sprints in the outfield on crutches. And I was like, what in the world am I looking at?
The Clowns.
That was the beginning of sort of realizing just how hard a person can work, how grateful a person could be to just be in between the white lines and playing. And so Dave pulled me along by kind of waking me up to seeing just how good it is to play a little kid's game for one summer. So that was one of the craziest, wildest, most amazing summers of my life. And I still am friends with several of the guys on the team, and we never cease to crack ourselves up reliving that summer of 1988. So Dave pulled me along with his amazing attitude.
So if I'm not mistaken, you were a pitcher, and there's a story that always comes to mind for whatever reason when I think of you and the Indianapolis Clowns. And there was, for those in the audience, the Indianapolis Clowns were a professional baseball team. People moved up the ranks, but they did clown around on the sideline. It was part of the history of the team that went all the way back into the Negro Leagues before Hank Aaron even played for the Indianapolis Clowns, et cetera, et cetera. Satchel Paige, all the greats. And the team that you played on that Dave owned, and all the owners, but you guys would do skits. And one of the skits, I don't think you liked very much. All right? But if you could just explain in your own words what it was like when you had someone come in for you to pitch.
Yes. Well, this hilarious skit.
This is why he doesn't like clowns.
Yeah, right. Involved a fake toilet, a Baby Ruth candy bar, and a relief pitcher who was our professional clown, Wayne. So Tickles, I believe, was his.
Don't give me that blank Pepsi.
So it was usually when because we all, the clowns knew baseball. You had to know baseball in order to be a baseball clown. So typically this was when, maybe I walked 2 in a row or had some sort of, someone got a hit, and all of a sudden Tickles would say, time out, time, and he'd come running out to the mound with the plastic toilet. And I forget how it went. I believe he said the pitcher needs to be relieved. And instead of taking me out, he would say, sit on the toilet. I'd sit on the plastic toilet. And then everyone would laugh except for me. And then I'd get up. And then in Bill Murray fashion from the classic Caddyshack, old Tickles would reach into the toilet and pull out the Baby Ruth and eat it. And all the kids would groan and laugh, and all the parents would be like, oh my gosh, why did I buy a ticket to this game? And that was it. That was the hilarious skit that we did every night for 9
I'm so sorry to bring that up, Tim. I am very sorry now. So that's pretty classic. It doesn't get much better than that. 15 minutes of radio, I don't think. I think we've mastered ourselves. So let's talk about you, Tim, a little bit more. I have 7 kids. For the listening radio that doesn't know that, I have 7 children. And for the record, it's with one wife, which makes it kind of either me crazy or her crazy or both. And so, board games and things with 7 kids is something that we did, the Monopolies and all the different games. But one of the games that we played before I ever knew you was the game Blurt. And tell us how you came up with this particular game, the game Blurt, and what your involvement was, because it was something that impacted our family. It was one of our kids' favorite games.
Awesome. Well, I was in Sarasota. I think I said this off the air. After the Clowns, I came to Sarasota to try it with the White Sox, and I did not make the team, but fell in love with the area. And I decided, I've been trying this dream for a while. I think it's time to get a real job. And I was a biology major, so I was working at a rehab center at the time in Sarasota, and I had a girlfriend who was a 3rd grade teacher. And I went into her classroom at the end of the school year to keep some kids occupied while she tested some other kids. And these are, if you don't know, 3rd graders are like 8 years old. So that's a tough crowd to keep their attention. And I was trying to read to them stories, and they had heard all these stories before, and I was losing the crowd. They weren't too interested in anything, and my only job was to keep them quiet, and it wasn't working. And I remember reaching on the shelf and pulling off a children's dictionary from the shelf, and I turned to the first page, and this is just desperation, and I read, okay, what's the word for the nut of an oak tree? And this kid said, oak nut. And I said, no, it's an acorn. But that's pretty funny. I don't know why it's not called an oak nut, but it's not. It's an acorn. And I turned to the next page and I said, okay, here's another one. The first meal of the day. And another kid said, waffles. And I was like, no, I'm looking for breakfast, but that's funny too. And I just started reading definitions, and they would blurt out the words. And literally, that was the moment when I realized the power of play, because 30 seconds prior, they wanted nothing to do with me, and now they were like leaning forward, quiet, waiting for me to read the next clue. And I thought, maybe that would be a good game. And that was the beginning of Blurt.
That's great.
Very cool. Now, that wasn't your first game, was it? Your first?
Yeah, Tribon was my first game. So at the time, the reason I was thinking of games was because I had already invented one with some college buddies. So I was sort of in the industry. So yeah, the first game was Tribon, which is a whole other story.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, that's pretty exciting. There's not too many people that have invented any games, especially not ones. How many estimate how many games has Blurt and Tribon? How many have they sold? Do you have an estimation on that?
Tribon has sold over 3 million copies, and Blurt is about 1.5 million now. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
and still growing and still growing.
yeah, and I remember distinctly getting a letter from, before the internet, a letter from a guy that said, Blurt was my favorite game growing up. So that made me feel old.
Yeah, my kids are 30, so 30 and 29.
Exactly. The kid was an architect. And yeah, so Blurt 20, what is it now? 27 years old, and Tribon's 31 years old. So that's crazy.
Right. It goes quick. Well, we're on the 104.1 River West Radio, and we're WXRW in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And this is Dave Clark, Doug Cornfield, and Dave Geis, along with special guest Tim Walsh for this evening's show. Tim is the founder of the Playmakers. He's been a game maker. He was a professional baseball star, and all around just great fun person, and he's actually been a lot of help to Dave Clark and I over the years with our sports camps, helping us get videos made. You kind of done it all for us, and we're grateful for that help. And now he is a contributor to the new book, Pulling Each Other Along, that's due to come out here in the next few months. And he's just got a wonderful chapter that we talked about earlier. So again, thanks, Tim, for that. So, Dave Clark, you have to have some questions for Tim.
Well, I want to go over to Dave. As we talked about off the air, Tim and Dave, you guys missed each other by a year with the Clowns. You would have been battery mates had you intertwined. But Dave, you have, you both played with the Clowns. I asked you, Dave, in the very first show, I believe you can remember one story that just sticks out in your mind. So, Tim, I'm going to go to you. Same question. In the 88 season, which for the listeners was the very last of the Indianapolis Clowns, which effectively closed out the history of the Negro Leagues, because we were the last remnant to play from a team with the Negro Leagues. But what, if you had to pick out one incident or story that sticks out for you in the 88 season, what would that be? Tough question.
Oh, no, that's something.
But not the toilet. Not the toilet on the mound. Other than that.
You go first, Dave.
He wasn't a part of the 88 season.
I wasn't on the 88 team.
Oh, I thought you asked both of us to tell us.
I asked Dave earlier when he was
Oh, okay.
on your show.
I'm a little slow.
The pitcher mind there. I understand.
Yeah, it's right.
Right. Thanks, Dave.
There's so many, so many. It was a great summer, but it's the annoying things that at the time you're annoyed, but then later you realize how funny it was. We had a doubleheader in Muscatine, Iowa,
Oh boy.
and if you've never been to Muscatine, Iowa, about 20 miles outside of Muscatine, you start getting this odor. And then as you pull into town, of course, the windows are up because it's 103 degrees. And you get out of the van, and there's a dog food processing plant in Muscatine. So it's kind of hard to really get if you could ever imagine the hairs of your nose curling, your eyelashes curling back, that's kind of the smell. And we were there for 2 days, and I believe it was 103. And the Clowns, we didn't have multiple uniforms. So you played one game, and of course you're drenching wet with sweat. And then 3 hours later, it's the second game. And I remember being asleep in the shade inside the equipment trailer, just trying to get some shut-eye out of the sun. And another clown, his name was Rainbow the Clown. He thought thought it would be hilarious if while sleeping, he would come up and take a wad of hair from my leg and yank it up. And I remember being awoken by my leg hair getting yanked and saying a few choice words to Rainbow. And I believe later that afternoon in the game, another little trick that Rainbow thought was hilarious was to go underneath the bleachers and tie people's shoes together, shoelaces. And I do recall him doing that to a rather large gentleman, and the gentleman getting up and stumbling. And we thought Rainbow was going to die right then and there. So, yeah, that was just one afternoon on the cloud.
Oh, yeah. Little Muscatine.
Oh, what a dream season.
Tim, you talking about Muscatine, you remember the river bugs in Muscatine?
Yes.
Every night.
Yeah, oh, yes.
And then they would die overnight. You'd be walking on them all day long and just crunch, 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 crunch. Man, everywhere.
They must.
Did either one of you guys ever? You knew George Long.
Yeah.
Did you know George Long, Tim?
I met him, I think, briefly at one game, but I remember a lot of the stories that you used to tell.
The one story that sticks out from my playing days with the Clowns was when I played for him back in the 70s. And Mr. Long wrote me a letter inviting me out to the tryout that he was having in Muscatine. So I drove out and I had his address. Of course, there's no GPSs or anything in those days. And so I'm going down Liberty Street. He lived at 505 Liberty Street. And when I pulled up past 505 Liberty Street, the grass was about 3 feet tall. The house was falling apart. And I said, that can't be the owner of the Clowns. I got to keep going. So I kept driving down the street. There was no more 505s. I turned around, pulled back up to 505. I got out of the car real tepidly. And here comes this gentleman down the street, older man, 2 hands under a grocery bag, a paper grocery bag. And he's holding it in front of his chest, and he's eating an apple.
Yeah.
And the apple's dripping down the sides of his mouth. And I got out of the car, and I went back up to him, and I said, would you know where Mr. George Long lives? He goes, I'm George Long. I said, Dave Clark. Hey, Dave, come on in the house. I go in the house. He never threw away a Sporting News or a letter that he received. It was all over you could hardly move inside the house. The one thing that sticks out to me is meeting his wife, because I wasn't in there but 5 minutes, and she took a flying flugie into a spittoon, and she was chewing tobacco, fitting in 3 or 4 feet, and she never missed. That's my recollection of my first Indianapolis Clown story.
Another case of somebody working on their strengths, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So we got about a minute to wrap up the live section, and just for the people on 104.1 River West Radio, we're just happy that you're here listening in. We hope you enjoy the show. Catch us on Facebook at D3 Day or our Disability Dream and Do group. Ask to join that. We'd love to hear from you. We've had Tim Walsh on the show today. Tim, it's been a pleasure having you. We're going to stick around here in about a minute and have a recap on Facebook, social media, and YouTube. So this has been the 104.1 River West Radio with Tim Walsh.
Thanks, guys.
Tim.
It was great.
back live on Facebook with Tim Walsh, and we're on YouTube and wherever else we might be being shared or watched today. So Tim, thanks for doing the live version of the show. Now, I'm hopefully when we're talking about certain things that we didn't break any of the radio rules. Who knows?
I doubt it.
I hope not. Forgive us, River West Radio, if we did, or tell us if we did, so we can learn to be better. I think we were safe. I think we were PG. Maybe we'll pull Kurt in. He'll know better. So we'll pull Kurt in. I think. Oh, did we pass today, Kurt? Oh, is he on? Is he on?
Yep. Yeah, good program. You complied. So
we complied.
All right.
I had to be
I
close.
tell people I have my hat. It's got our logo on it. You can message us if you want our pulling each other along hat. We need at least $100, right, Tim? Something like that. That's what we need for that. So, but anyway, I saw this on this picture I'm pulling up right here. I saw this on your Facebook page, and I had to steal that.
That is awesome.
So that goes right along with pulling each other along, and my book, A Pound of Kindness, about this boy, that needed some help one day, and I don't know who that guy is, but he's usually sitting beside me when I'm here at his house. So poundofkindness.net, if you're interested in that, you can help us out. Promo code D3Day will get you at least some free shipping. And so if you're here listening and you want to give a great gift away, we would appreciate the help. A Pound of Kindness. And I'll plug this book. I kind of already did without saying when we were on the radio, but this was literally one of my kids' favorite games. It's hugely fun. It's for the whole family. It's Blurt, and you'll just have a lot of fun with it. And I think you have that game available either on your website, Tim, or you can maybe share how people might be able to get your products and things like that if people are interested to learn more about the Playmakers.
Yeah, they can go to theplaymakers.com. That's my website, and there's links there to different projects.
There you go. Theplaymakers.com. Very cool. So I got 3 clowns with us today, Kurt. You got any questions for these 3 clowns?
It doesn't get any better than that.
I'm not one of the 3. Okay, this is new.
There you go.
Maybe they are.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious about childhood. Are there childhood memories that kind of make it that in our adult male life we're still all about fun and games and tomfoolery and let go of that inner boy? What can you tell us there, Tim?
Yeah, well, I'm a big play advocate, not just sports, but kids learn how to socialize and learn how to figure out their world through play. And Dave and I were actually chatting on the phone this afternoon about the fact that kids today don't seem to get outside as much as they used to. And that unstructured play where they've got to figure out the rules themselves is literally how kids get socialized. And if a kid is 3-4 years old and they don't have that play with other kids, then they don't figure that out. And it's a shame when you run into a kid that never really played with his or her peers. So yeah, we're big play advocates in this house, and of course, being in the toy industry, we talk about that a lot. So I'm blessed to have grown up with 5 brothers and sisters, and we just beat the snot out of each other and loved every minute of it.
Good stuff. All right. This is a good
ball,
crowd.
Wiffle ball was a big game for you, right, Tim?
Oh, huge, yeah. Yeah, wiffle ball was invented in the 50s by this Connecticut father and son, and his son was trying to throw a curve and was hurting his arm. And his dad thought, he was a pretty creative guy, and thought, I bet I could come up with a ball that would curve on its own. And took a round perfume bottle and cut holes in one hemisphere, and that was the first prototype, and it curved. And it's also a cool game to play in confined areas because you don't always have 9 people to play a game. And the thing about wiffle ball is you can play with 2 people, a pitcher and a hitter. There's no base running, and no matter how hard you hit it, it's not going to go very far. It's not going to break any windows. Yeah, it came out in 1953, and I loved it as a kid.
Yeah, I remember playing that.
Tim, now you tell me how to doctor a ball to throw a curveball well after my playing days ended. I mean, come on.
You just gotta come home.
Should have told me that a long time ago, man. Oh.
So I think Dave, when you were talking about your most unpleasant toiletry pitching relief, Dave has an added on story where he got involved with that little skit one time. What was that all about, Mr. Clark?
Well, I did. I got involved with that. But and you know how I detested the clowns, Tim. I shouldn't say that, but
you just did. It's on recording.
I'm gonna divert to another story because you were on the mound in Jasper, Indiana, Tim. And if you recall, I called timeout. I think a guy singled off you, and I called timeout. And I walked over to the mound, and you thought I was coming to talk to you. And Sal Tombasco, who was the director of our clown unit, the clowns unit, was playing third base that night. He was also a player, but he was in charge of the entertainers. So when I walked to the mound, we were, you thought I was coming to talk to you. I didn't even look at you. And get the hell out of the way. Get out of the way. Glad we're off the air. Get out of the way. I got Sal. Get over here. And Sal comes, and you're sitting there as a bystander, and I'm chewing Sal out because there's no entertainers on the field. They're nowhere to be found. And I'm Sal, where are the freaking entertainers? What's going on? And he's I don't know. So after the inning was over, we go to the dugout, and before the inning ends, Sal comes back up to me, and he says, "You'll never guess where the clown is." I said, "Hard tell, where is he?" And he goes, "He's on the bus. He's got stage fright." He had a clown that had stage fright. I'll never forget that one. That's
the wrong profession, buddy.
Yes, he was in the wrong business. But I go back to your question. The skit that you described so eloquently when we were on the radio, that's the only skit in the 5 years that we were active under our ownership that I ever participated in, and only once. And that was you described it perfectly. The pitcher sits down, he gets relief. I walked over from first base. I don't know what was in me that night because I can't stand the show part of the game of the Indianapolis Clowns. I could never stand the show part. But and that truth comes out now. But I hammed it up for the crowd. I looked up the crowd, and then I looked in the toilet, looked at the crowd again, looked in the toilet, reached down, pulled it out, pulled the bar, and I showed it to the crowd, and they were like, "Oh!" And that's the only time I ever did anything on the field of the show.
It was the good Baby Ruth, wasn't it?
That was really nice. It was good, yeah.
It's-
I was actually hungry.
That's probably why you did it. You were hungry.
Probably.
I was hungry.
So there's a lot of bologna and peanut butter sandwiches on the clowns. There's a lot of them. So
Bug
Yep.
juice.
Bud juice, yes.
bug juice, correct? Bug juice. Yeah, I forgot about bug juice. Bug juice was $1 a gallon back then. So that was
Correct. Exactly.
that was economy right there. Dave, do you have any questions for Tim?
I do actually. I'm just kind of curious. Being a pitcher, what was it like? Because obviously Dave being a pitcher as well. What was it like for you on that team with Dave constantly on you being another pitcher? I mean, was it a little more stressful than? I was a catcher, so I didn't have to deal with it as much. I had my own problems back there with him, but being a pitcher, was it more? Did you feel like you were more under the microscope working for Dave or playing for Dave?
I don't think so. No, I played some first base when I wasn't pitching, and my favorite position was pitching. I don't remember any. I mean, he was, he wasn't much on wildness. He wanted you to throw strikes.
Oh yeah.
He wasn't too keen on that. And I had a balk move that I could pick people off at first. It was perfectly illegal. I'd pick my. I remember some coach said, if you want to steal a base, you look at the front, you look at the heel of the front leg of the pitcher, and as soon as that heel comes off the ground, that's when you break. And being a pitcher, I was like, ooh, I'm gonna. So I had a little balk move where I'd lift my heel and then turn and throw. And I remember I caught Dave off a little off guard, and the ball almost hit him in the face. But he had good reflexes. He thought I was going home, and he kind of looked in, and then I was throwing at him, but he caught it. No, I don't remember any. It was a great summer, man. It was.
I mean, what's your recollection of the rice drill?
Yeah, Dave had a drill. It was a big 5-gallon white bucket that paint was typically in, and but the paint was gone and filled with rice, and it was you would dig down through the rice to the bottom of the bucket repeatedly, and that was supposed to strengthen your wrist and the tendons of your elbow. And I was a believer. If you had told me, you need to drink molasses and that'll get you to the show, I would have done anything. It didn't matter. It could have been, he could have had some other weird drill where you stood on one leg and drank cherry juice through your nose, and I would have been like, really? Is that what you got to do? So, yeah, I did the rice drill. We had a bucket of rice, and that was great. And I remember one of my biggest recollections was I came down before the rest of the team showed up, and it was Dave and Tank and I at Garrick Field in Ocala.
Yep.
I remember thinking, oh, Garrick Field, it must be named after Lou Gehrig. It's probably a really nice park. I showed up, and there was a 4-foot weed growing out of the behind the rubber on the mound, and I thought, there's the Bush Leagues, and this is the Weed League.
Weed League, yes.
And
about a block away from there, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So whenever I drive through Ocala, people think of Ocala as like horse farms, and I think of 5-foot weeds on Garrick Field.
You got it, man. You got it.
And it was named after some politician named Garrick, not Luke.
What wasn't even spelled the same way.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
No. Hey, I have to do this for my kids, Tim. How often did you interact with this fella?
Dan the man. Well, not too much. I was at a trade show in Las Vegas, and he was just walking down the aisle, and my buddy had a cell phone, and I was like, oh my gosh, because I'm a big comic book geek. And he was great. I said, do you mind if I grab a picture? And he was like, sure thing. So Stan the man. He was very pleasant guy.
Yeah. Had an interesting life.
He did.
Yeah. Crazy.
So any other questions, Kurt? You got something?
Well, I don't know. I mean, where do you get your inspiration from for the games I'm seeing that you provide? Like, where is this all coming from?
Yeah, I have a buddy who's a stand-up comedian, and he's always writing jokes, and he could get a joke at a grocery store. He'll overhear a piece of a conversation and go, oh, that could be a joke. I know a guy that played for the Clowns, Curtis Maloney, outfielder, lives in Nashville. He's a veterinarian now, but he's a very talented musician, and he can find lyrics to songs anywhere. He'll be like, oh, that's a great little turn of phrase. And the same thing with game inventors. You can just be looking at something and think, oh, I was in Taiwan. This was before COVID. And in Taiwan, in grocery stores, anyone handling food has a plastic shield. It's just the way they do it over there, and long before COVID. And I remember looking at a woman serving food, and I thought, if that lens that's on her little mask was a magnifying lens, her mouth would look huge, and that would be hysterical. It was the start of a game that is now in Target called Mega Mouth that I invented. And you hold up a magnifying lens and your mouth is huge and you have to read each other's lips and figure out what you're saying. And so that came out of being in a grocery store in Taiwan and thinking like a weirdo, oh, but if that was magnifying lens, that'd be hilarious. Yeah, that's where that came from. So you never know.
Is that your big game right now? The Big Mouse or whatever you call it?
Mega Mouth.
Mega Mouth?
Yeah, that's the one that's probably selling the best. But we have in Canada, for some reason, we have a line of games called Rue Games, and our games up there are selling really well in Canada, which is great. So I'm not playing baseball for a living, but I still get to play for a living, so I can't complain.
We all have arrested developments. When you play sports as an adult, for as long as the three of us did, you have arrested development. We never grew up.
No.
And we still, at least in my case, still have it.
All right, I'm going to ask you, we have someone listening in named Al Tobin who's been making several comments.
Where's Stevie Nicks at?
So we have to, in my opinion, we have to share an Al Tobin story. Are you ready, Al? You can comment in the comments, and if they're nice enough, we'll put them on. Yoo-hoo is one of the things I know he loves. But what from you guys? You guys, you know, I know Al from a different perspective years later.
Yes.
Well, how do you guys remember Al? What's an Al Tobin story that we can share to the public?
Well, Al is a great guy. He's hilarious, and he was our manager, and he didn't play very much, but occasionally he would play.
He did one time, Tim.
Well, this is the story, and I am proud of being able to make Dave Clark laugh so loud, so hard, he fell off his chair.
Fell off my stool. Yeah.
So I don't know how this came to be, but Dave and I ended up in the press box doing play-by-play. It probably was a game where we showed up and it was, you know, softball.
No, Tim, it was a good team. It really was, and we were kicking their behind.
Oh,
it was a very good team.
Okay.
They were the Redbirds or something, but we were kicking their butt. So if you recall, Al always wanted to get in a game. He always was bugging me constantly. Just let me want it back. And so that's when I pulled you and I out of the game. We replaced Al. If you recall, he was out of there. We didn't even know he was gone. He was gone so fast to change into a uniform once that he knew he was going to get in the game. So take it from there. What happened?
Al was very fond of trying to make us laugh while we were playing. We had a catcher named Ned Kerr, and he would say, "Now batting Ned Kerr," and he would hold the R for like 30 seconds. And
they were best friends, if I recall.
Yeah, no, not really. But Al, so I was trying to make Al laugh. Now, if you don't, Al is a Jewish guy, faithful Jewish guy, would look for kosher food and proud of his heritage and his religion, and rightly so. And I remember trying to make him laugh. So from the PA booth, I said, "Now batting Al Tobin, probably the finest Jewish athlete since Koufax." Al did not laugh at that, but Dave fell off his stool. I can't remember what happened, if Al got a hit or he won.
Oh no, he didn't come close. I remember what happened. You were up there going, "Here comes the first pitch," and we could hear Al. We were right on top of the plate up in the air, and Al go, "Yeah." And the next pitch, and the third one, and he's cussing on the way back to the dugout. That smash fell off the chair.
Oh my God!
Al got his pinch hit. His pinch
Yes.
hitting appearance. He was the greatest Jewish first baseman that night. That's a great recollection of Al Tobin. Yeah.
Fancied himself like Sandy Koufax. He fancied himself a bit of a pitcher as well. I remember him. I remember Ned was told to warm up Al, not happy about it, and Ned squatted down, ready for the first warm up pitch, which Al promptly launched over his head by about 20 feet. Ned never left his crouch.
No.
Didn't say a word, and Al was like, "Oh, sorry, Ned. Oh, okay, I'll get the ball." And then he.
Tim, I had a catbird seat on there. I was out running sprints, and the bullpen was down the right field line. So when Al airmailed that over his head, this was in Salem, Virginia, and
Got a better memory than me, man.
And the stadium had all the ads on the outfield wall, but the gate was open. Right behind Ned, the outfield gate was open, and the ball went all the way out and through it. And Ned, like you said, Ned never moved. He never came out of his crouch. But I happened to be running back toward the right field line when that happened. And I looked at him, oh, jeez. And Ned never moved, and he looked over at me, and his eyes met mine, and it was like, I'm going to kill you for this. That night we were playing one of those softball, whatever. The games I hated those games. But
who booked those games?
Probably Al Tobin.
Blame it on Al.
Blame it on Al. There he is. What's his response?
Fans walking into the game. I don't know.
Is Al aware of the letter you got from Paul Simon's production company?
I don't think he is.
I mean, not yet. No.
I will forward that to him.
Yeah, well,
he'll probably have to get a lawyer for that.
Not gonna
I don't know. Dave, you have an Al Tobin memory?
Oh man, yeah. I remember. Must have been '86, and we were probably in Ocala still during like spring workouts or whatever. And he was my roommate at the hotel. And like Tim, very, very big time, Jewish man, and believed in his faith and his traditions. But I remember the first morning that it was our first night in the hotel, and it must have been the first morning where it had to be 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Al is up at the foot of my bed, wrapping himself up in these ribbons or something. I don't know what it was. And I could hear him chanting something or whatever. And I look up. And I was like, Al, what are you doing? And he says, oh, sorry. I got to do this every morning. And he's wrapping these things on his arms. And I want to say it was around part of his head or something. I don't know what it was. To this day, I have no idea what he was doing. And so I thought right then and there, this guy is special, It was a good time. He was a great guy. I remember another time, I think we were maybe in Bath, and he had a water jug. And we know how he was with his food. It had to be a certain type of food. Well, even his water, he was pretty protective of. And I think another player on the team wanted to have a drink of water out of his water jug. And Al, politely said, no, I got that for a reason. I got to have that. It's for me. And I think the guy took a sip of it anyways. Al blew up at it. And, we were trying to calm that situation down before a game. And yeah, he's a great guy, but very, very quirky. That's for sure. But amazing guy. I love working with him.
Al did a great job for us. I'll give him that. He did a great job for us, and he put up with a lot of crap from players, from me. One of the first memories I have of Al germinated, so to speak, from a winter meetings meeting. Sal Tombasco and I were at the winter meetings. Can't really remember what year. Might have been '86. And Al walked by the booth, started a conversation with Sal. If I recall correctly, we had the Washington Redskins New York Giants game on the TV in our back of our booth, and we were more interested in, and Sal and I were more interested in watching that than we were in doing what we were supposed to be doing there. And Al started a conversation with Sal, and we were looking for a general manager at that time. So one thing led to another, and Al came behind the booth, into the booth, behind the table, the desktop, and he almost sat on me. He didn't even see me, and he sat down, and I was like, "Excuse me," and that was my first meeting of Al Tobin, when he almost sat on my lap. So I don't think he was more concerned with addressing Sal than seeing that somebody was sitting in the chair he's about to sit in. So that was the start of a lifelong friendship from there.
Yeah.
And we'll get him on the show if he gives us what, $1,000 sponsorship. Maybe two. I don't know.
Let's see, what was the response to that? Al said 85, then he said 86.
I don't know which one.
You know what? That must have been the winner.
Never saw you.
Says never saw me.
There you go.
That probably was the winter of '86, because in '86 season was that girl. I can't think of her name now.
Diane Ox.
Diane Ox. Yeah.
From Ithaca College.
Is she the one in that interview?
She's the one in the interview. Yeah.
So Tim, I have an interview that I really had. I haven't showed it. I've kept some of this stuff, on hold.
Thank God.
And it's an interview with Dave and George Long in a setting. They're like in a living room in 1980, but it looks like it's 1960s. They have
it's 86.
It's
85.
Whatever. 85, 86. So it's George Long, Dave, and
Diane.
And one of the questions comes out that there's a female that was interviewing Dave and George and the crew, and Dave's sitting there. He's got his thumbs twiddling, so it's this hilarious. He's on a chair, and she asks if the guys were married or single on the team. And literally, without even a pause, Dave said, "Well, we're all single from town to town." So, Dave Clark in his single days. There it is, and wrapped up in one sentence. But I had this wonderful interview. I mean, if you think about it, that's pretty classic. Another thing that I have is, I'll ask you a trivia question, Tim. Who made the last out for all of the Negro Leagues, all of the Indianapolis Clowns?
I believe it was Dave Clark.
It was Dave Clark.
I was there. I think it was a ground out or something.
And you know what happened next? Because Dave said he didn't participate in Shadow Ball. And maybe for the few people that are watching and listening, can you describe what Shadow Ball is, one of you? Tim, it's your show, so why don't you describe it?
Shadow Ball was a pantomime of a team taking infield practice. There was no ball, and you exaggerated all your movements and dove and you'd pick up a little bit of dirt, so when you threw it, smoke would come out of your hand. That's how hard we threw. Smoke would fly out of your hand. And we did it to, what was it? Jump, right? By Van Halen. Another song that was played at nauseum.
Oh, you're in big trouble, man.
I hear the first note of that on the radio. Right? That's Clowns.
Takes you back. Yep.
Yeah, so I guess that was usually after the game or sometimes the 7th inning stretch, and apparently we waited till the end of the game this particular time. So Dave grounded out and did not participate in Shadow Ball, but went, where did you go? I don't remember.
So for the very, very last Shadow Ball, he was the one with the bat.
I don't remember, but he's got it.
I got it on video.
I told him I never did it.
Wow.
But so that tells me he knew that was the last game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was throwing up the dirt and hitting pretending like he was hitting, and you guys played really the end of all ends of Shadow Ball from a historical perspective.
Well, and of course, none of us knew it then. I always think of the fun phone call. I remember getting these messages from a Dr. Leighton Ravel, and like not returning his calls because I'm like, I don't know Leighton Ravel. This guy's going to try to sell me land in Arkansas or something. Know who this guy is. And finally, I mean, he was so persistent. I was like, okay, I'll pick up the phone. And he said, "Are you Tim Walsh?" Yes. "Did you play on the 1988 Clowns?" Yes. "I'd like to send you a baseball and have you sign it." And I was like, why on earth would you want it? And he said, "You played on the last barnstorming baseball team in American history." And I was like, what? Yep, that was the end of an era, and I want everyone to sign a ball. And I was like, wow, that's pretty. And that ended up, creating all kinds of history, and meeting him was wonderful. What a great guy he was. And yeah.
Pretty interesting, guys. Pretty interesting. We actually got a call, was it last week?
Oh.
From Houston. We got a call from
Oh, yeah.
I got a call in the middle of the day.
A
week ago today. He calls me in the afternoon, and his name's Nathan. And he's with Fox Television in Houston, and he's doing a piece on an Indianapolis Clown from the 70s. So before Dave played and pitched for the Clowns, for George, and so he wanted to interview Dave, and so we did this interview, and we did it just right here where we're standing, and you should have seen his eyes light up when he's learning about Dave's story, and he's like, I told him, I said, if you're trying to do a piece on the Indianapolis Clowns, you pretty much hit the jackpot here with Dave. And so this isn't your last season. That's 1980, what, 4 or 5?
That's 84.
84. That's all those team pictures pretty much look alike to me.
Yeah.
Just different guys playing. So, well, we're at a record River West Radio pulling each other along show time frame tonight, hitting the hour mark. So let's wrap it up on Facebook. If anybody's actually watched this whole thing through, if you've seen it all live, send me your address in Messenger. We'll send you a Dave Clark. We'll send you an apology, but we'll send you a Dave Clark signed picture or something. Because unless you want Tim instead, if you want Tim to sign something, we'll get Tim to do it and then postage. All those games he sold, he's probably got more than we do. Our stream is having issues, so we're gonna wrap it up, guys. You guys don't have to leave, but we're gonna wrap it up on Facebook and YouTube and wherever else I have it going out. It's been a pleasure for anybody that's hung in there this long, and hopefully we see you next week at 6:30, whatever Milwaukee time, and 7:30 on the East Coast time. For Dave, and my name's Doug, and thanks Tim and Kurt for joining us.
Thanks,
we'll
Tim.
see you next
Thanks,
week.
Dave. Thanks, Kurt. See you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.